Hi, and welcome to this discussion of outcomes measurement sponsored by the United Way of Southern Chester County. We're going to define the term outcomes measurement, discuss the value of outcomes measurement to you as a board member or an executive director, talk about how you can use the information you have in your agency to develop outcomes measurements, and then review some samples of measurements proposed in the past to give you an idea of how you can change what you've been saying into a full outcomes measurement concept. Let's get started. Outcomes measurement provides data on how effectively and efficiently you're meeting your program goals. The measures focus on how many clients reach the destination, not on what road they took to get there. During this presentation, I'm going to use English as a second language as a sample program throughout. I'm using that because hopefully we can all remember what it was like to learn English, and we'll be able to use that as a viable sample. As we review the material in the presentation, please think about how you can use the ideas presented here within your own agency's programs. An outcome is a change in the client knowledge, skill, attitude, value, behavior, or condition. In the context of English as a second language programs, we're looking to define how they use English. Are they able to shop at a store or a particular type of store? Can they converse in English with their supervisors at work? Are they able to hold a general conversation in English with other people? Those are the kinds of things that are samples of outcomes. We want to measure outcomes because it has a lot of value for you, your staff and volunteers, and the agency in total. You unleash the talents within your agency because you're not measuring specific activities. When you measure specific activities, it requires everyone to do exactly the same thing at the same time, whether it's effective for them or not. When we measure outcomes, we're allowing people to use their own creativity to adjust the activities so that they can creatively resolve whatever it is that's the barrier to accomplishing the outcome, the learning, skill change, attitude change, and the like. You clearly and strongly communicate what's most important to you as the manager of an agency so everyone understands it when you define the outcomes in an outcomes measurement program. That helps create commitment. They know what the target is, and you're allowing them to figure out how to get there with your assistance. It allows everyone to feel successful because they're able to help all of their clients, not just those whom the defined activities work best with. That improves morale and reduces turnover, making it much easier for you to run your own agency because you get to spend more time on doing more interesting things than training new staff all the time. You can focus on the exceptions and work with your staff to handle them, doing an idea exchange or whatever it takes, planning for the future, not on daily activities. So it's much easier for you to manage your agency, and you have a much more successful agency in the long term. Now, before we talk about outcomes measurement specifically, we want to make sure everyone uses the same program model terminology. For anyone who's a business person, this model is going to look very familiar because it's really the same way a business operates. You start with resources, people, money, materials, and knowledge. Apply a process to those resources, which are the actions that your agency staff and volunteers take to combine those resources and create an output. And that output is the direct, immediate result of the activities. The cumulative effect of the series of outputs that your program involves changes the attitude, skill, knowledge, therefore is the outcome of the program. Why should you measure? And what should you measure? Well, you want to measure because you want your agency to be able to get funding because you're successful and you can demonstrate it. The best way to demonstrate it is to quantify how many clients experienced the target change or how many target changes individual clients experienced. It can work either way. As an example, how many clients were able to speak English while they shopped is one quantitative measure. An alternate measure would be how many clients could use English to successfully accept instruction at work, shop on their own, and hold conversations. They're both quantitative measures of the success of an English as a second language program. A quality measure makes sure that it's been a complete change. The worst thing you can do is measure quantity without quality, because you're never sure if the quality is there without testing for it. In an English as a second language, you can have all of your clients using English in a work environment. The question is, how understandable are they on a quality basis? So you want to measure that also in an English as a second language program. For the English as a second language program, the resources in your model are going to be the objects used to teach. So in our program model, we're looking at tape recorders, chalkboards, chalk, staff knowledge of English. The process used is going to be various exercises. A simple one for teaching nouns would be pointing at an object and saying its name. The output examples in English as a second language would be things like the ability to state the name of a series of objects presented to your clients, or the ability to describe an object held in front of them that they've used in their training. The outcome that you're looking for is, again, the ability to converse in everyday situations of various kinds in English. So when you're measuring, you're going to be measuring not what was done, not what lists were evaluated and learned. You're going to be measuring the outcomes, the ability to do things like use English at work, use English while shopping, use English in everyday conversations. How do you define target outcomes? You make sure you have SMART goals first. A SMART goal is one that is specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time specific. A specific goal is one that is targeted on your clients as a single change. It's measurable when it can be observed in some way. It's achievable as long as your experience tells you that your clients should be able to accomplish the goal. Not all necessarily, but the vast majority. It's realistic if it's reasonable to assume your clients want to make the targeted change. If they don't, no matter how hard you try, they're not going to. And it's got to be time specific. How long will it be before you accomplish the goal? If we use English as a second language as an example again, a goal that meets the SMART criteria might be 90% of the clients will be able to understand English instructions spoken by their supervisors within 6 months, asking for any clarifications needed in English. It's specific. They're getting instructions in English in a work environment. It's measurable because we can observe their ability to execute the instructions. It's achievable. It's realistic. And it's time specific, within 6 months. How then do we define outcome measures when we know what our goals are and we understand the general concept of our process model? Well, looking at English as a second language example again, let's assume our targeted change is the ability to understand work instructions. That's what we write out as a change in knowledge, skill, attitude, value, behavior, or condition that your program is expected to make. There can be more than one outcome potentially. What you want to do is make sure you don't have a laundry list of them. If you have more than 2 or 3, you're probably not going to be able to accomplish them all, or your staff and volunteers are going to have trouble prioritizing them to make sure that they can accomplish them all. For each of those statements of outcomes, you should make a list of how you can observe the change being accomplished. Then you're going to select one of those as the basis for your measurement process. Again, for English as a second language, what are the ways that we can observe that someone at work is understanding instructions presented in English? Well, you can talk with a supervisor. You can establish a set of standard instructions to be used in the class as a test. You can talk with the coworkers at work, or you can have the clients self-report how well they're doing. So there's lots of ways you can do the measurement. They don't have to be expensive. They don't have to be difficult. Looking at your resources, you're going to select the one that's best for you to use. Assuming very limited resources, self-reporting in our example would be the best to choose. Then you want to define how you're going to actually measure it. Well, we've just done that. Based upon our restrictions of resources, we're going to use self-reporting. Then just start using it. It's not hard. It's just a very simple, basic process. Using the example of a senior program, let's review what they've got as their stated goal. Physical and cognitive abilities will be improved, maintained, or the progression of the disease process altered. Is that a SMART goal? Is it specific? Not really. It involves two changes, physical and cognitive abilities, and we expect to improve, maintain, or alter the progression. So we're not very specific on what we expect the result to be. Is it measurable? Probably. Is it achievable? Probably. Is it realistic? Probably. Is it time specific? Not at all. No time has been stated. The expected outcomes are stated as 80% of participants will take part in, and then there was a list of specific activities. And a second outcome is also provided. Cognitive exam will stay within 5 points of the prior year. If we look at our program model, are these outcome statements really outcome statements? 80% of participants will take part in sounds like a process statement, not an outcome. So that one's excluded. Cognitive exam will stay within 5 points of the prior year. That's a good outcome statement. It's not telling us how we're going to do it. It's not process or activity specific. It doesn't detail any resources involved other than the exam. And it doesn't tell us what the output of the efforts of the agency are in the program. It simply talks about the outcome. Let's look at revising these and see what we come up with. The goal could be stated as 90% of clients with mental degeneration will maintain their current cognitive abilities for a minimum of 1 year. This is a SMART goal. It's specific. We're talking about mental degeneration and cognitive abilities only. It's measurable because we're talking about 95% of the clients. It's achievable because it's not probable that everybody will be able to accomplish the same thing. It's realistic, again because of that percentage in there, it's realistic, and it's time specific. We're doing it within 1 year. The outcomes possible are that at the end of the year, the cognitive exam will stay within 5 points of the year start value or year ending value from previous year, or we can observe clients interacting in an activity that takes specific cognitive abilities. For example, playing a game like Scrabble or Monopoly. So there's two possible outcomes that we could use. The first one listed is the one that was already presented, so let's choose that one. Let's look at a second example. This is a camp situation. The stated goal is to improve the physical and emotional health of the campers. Again, is that a SMART goal? Is it specific? Again, we have a problem. It's not specific because it's talking about both physical and emotional health of the campers. If we want to have a goal that handles both of those, we should have two separate goals. Then they can both be SMART goals. Is it measurable? Possibly. Is it achievable? Probably. Is it realistic? Also probably. Is it time specific? Yes, in the context that this is a camp situation that's lasting a couple of weeks. Because we know that the situation is the camp and it only lasts a couple of weeks, we know it has to be in that time frame. It would be better if it was stated within the goal, but that's good enough. The stated expected outcome is to offer a variety of creative tools to aid in the expression of feelings and improve relaxation skills. Let's take our program model again and look at that outcome statement. Is it a statement of outcomes, output, process, or resources? In my opinion, it's a combination of two things. It's a combination of process and output to offer a variety of creative tools, sounds like a process involved, to aid in the expression of feelings and improve relaxation skills. They sound like specific direct outputs from those. What attitude, skill, or other outcome is changing? Remember, an outcome is a change in knowledge, skill, attitude, value, behavior, or condition. And I'm not sure relaxation skills is any of those, or a change in feelings, though possibly that could be interpreted as such. A better statement for the camp might be the following: improve the physical health of the campers in terms of their ability to be active by 5%. The outcome measure then can be to measure the portion of the day they participate in physical activities both at the beginning and ending of the camp period. Again, we're allowing the time-specific nature of the goal to be understood to be the 2 weeks of the camp. So looking at this, we have an effective statement of goal and an outcome measurement. It's a simple measurement because we're simply looking at how often they're involved in physical activity. If at the beginning of the camp they're involved in only one physical activity and it takes 60 minutes, we're looking for them to increase that by only a few minutes. Very achievable, very realistic, it seems to me. And the simple measurement would be to say, well, they did that activity longer, or they added another physical activity, and the two combined are taking 65, 70 minutes. Outcomes measurement is a very simple process. It's very easy to use. It's very effective in communicating the effectiveness of your program. You build it by combining your program model, the resources, process, direct outputs to help you to get to the outcomes you want, with SMART goals that you've got. By using the 5-step process we've outlined, you can combine the two to create a viable program for measuring outcomes. The result for you is better communication with your funding sources, a more energized staff and volunteers, less focus of your time as a board and executive director on the daily activities. You get the focus on planning, on handling the exceptions that are difficult for your staff and where they ask for help, and you find you'll need fewer supervisors per worker. So your staff can be more effective, and you need fewer of them as supervisors. The reason you need fewer of them is because you're not trying to make sure they follow specific activities you've defined. You're simply measuring the outcomes as they perform their work. If you're not getting the outcome, it's an exception situation, and you want to sit down with your volunteer or staff member and discuss with them what they're doing and how it's working. You're handling the exception, not the norm. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope this has been very helpful.